Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Big Rican on Sports podcast. I'm your host. I'm the Big Rican. Today is Monday, August the 16th, 2021. We are more than halfway through August. Hard to believe, but here we are. So tonight I want to come to you with an actually non-Mets episode. Hard to believe. This will be a very Cleveland-centric episode. As a lot of things are going on. You have the new name of the baseball team. You have Ohio State is now into its fall practice with the schedule opening up in just a couple of weeks against Minnesota in a rare, actually not the last few years rare, but in my experience, a rare conference opener in prime time in Minnesota. And then, of course, we have the NFL is just around the corner. I know I've been saying this for months that it's baseball season, and I firmly believe that, but if I want to stay a little relevant, I got to talk a little Browns tonight. So that's where we're going to go, and we're going to end the show. So first things first, I want to give a shout out to Alex and to Tone for doing a lot of the stuff with me for the trade deadline. Really, Alex being on the show. Tone, if you listen, buddy. I am sorry I couldn't get you on, but with the schedule I'm keeping now between hours at work and little man and everything else, unfortunately, I couldn't get to do that other episode, but I will have you on. Because a little spoiler alert, that tapping you here is a box of baseball cards from the mid-'80s. So I'd love to go talk to you about those since you're the baseball card guy. So a lot's been going on in Cleveland sports, everybody. We had the NBA draft where the Browns, the Cavaliers actually may have hit pay dirt with Evan Mobley. And he looks like he's going to be as good as advertised. But I will come to you with an actual Cavs episode very soon. I didn't wrap up last season because it kind of annoyed me the way they finished it. I do love the fact that they're looking to sign Colin Sexton long-term, and Jared Allen has been signed long-term. Other big questions coming into this season for the Cleveland Cavaliers are they going to keep Kevin Love? Yet to be determined. So let's see what happens as we move forward with the Cavaliers going into the 2021-2022 NBA season. But let's get to Cleveland itself. So I want to tell you something. I opened up a box for my mom and dad who live in Cleveland, South Euclid, Ohio, to be exact. And my mom sent me a box for Father's Day. It had some stuff for my son in it, my younger Zachary, the older one, my younger son, Bobby, and it had this shirt in it for me. And I had just said to them recently, I needed a brown shirt that wasn't a player because I have my Baker Mayfield shirt, and I think this one fits better because the name on the front of the jersey means much more than the name on the back of the jersey. So it says Cleveland across the front. It is the skyline of my other home, and it is in orange and brown, the colors of the Cleveland Browns, who I will get to their schedule as it sits right here, and I will do my schedule picks during this episode. And I know this isn't a live episode like I did last year, but I only do this once. I don't edit, which people say is hilarious, but I don't edit. So, this is going to be my picks for the 2021 Cleveland Browns schedule. So let's start with the biggest thing in Cleveland sports recently, and that is the name change of the Cleveland Indians to next season, the Cleveland Guardians. All right. So for everybody who's angry, here's the story. If you live or know what Cleveland, some of the landmarks in Cleveland, or if you've seen the beginning of Major League, you see the bridge that connects the east side and the west side. It's called the Transportation Bridge. And the two statues that you see in the beginning of the movie are called the Guardians of Transportation. They have been a Cleveland staple for, 75, 80 years, if not more. Built in Cleveland by people from Cleveland. This is why they are now the Guardians. So I will say this, though. The Indians/Guardians, listen, you had Tom Hanks do the narration of this video. And it's very well known as I fix the camera a little bit because I don't like the angle I just left myself. Tom Hanks got his start in professional acting with the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival in Cleveland, Ohio, and has been an adopted Clevelander ever since. We're talking 40-some years. It was in the mid to late 70s that he did this, and he loves Cleveland. So to get Tom Hanks, first of all, that's some serious juice right there. Second of all, the video spoke to me. Now, I spent my formative years in Northeast Ohio. Growing up on the east side, I spent 14 to 21 there, and I call them my formative years because that's when you learn your work ethic. That's where you learn, everything gets intertwined into your system. Having lived those years on the east side and still call it home to this day, the video spoke to me. And it was a great marketing tool by the franchise to make this about the city, not the name on the front of the jersey. They made it about the name on the road jersey, and that says Cleveland, just like my t-shirt tonight, because it is about this town. And this town, more than any other one, I think, in sports, because a lot of these Midwestern towns take their personality and give it to their sports teams. Well, there has been none like the Cleveland Indians / Guardians that have taken on the city outside of the Browns like anything I've ever seen. This franchise has been one that came the closest before the Cavaliers to winning a championship, a lead in the 9th inning of Game 7 of the World Series in 1997. They won 2 titles in 1920 and 1948, going to a 3rd World Series in 54, and then they had the layoff until 95. They hold the record for the most wins in a row in Major League Baseball history with their 22-game win streak in 2017. This is a storied franchise in a city that even when they were phenomenal, they were never the top ticket until Art Modell took the franchise away. But in my opinion, they should have been the top ticket almost this entire time. That's because I'm a baseball guy, but that's just me. So the new name, and I will say this, the logo is garbage. It's horrible. It's a baseball with a G and some wings on it. It looks horrible. So I'm going to give a shout out to a guy I went to high school with. His name is Aaron Seacrest. If you follow him on social media, he goes by OK Pants or Pants Pantsley. One of the funniest dudes I've ever met in my entire life. I've known him since 94. So yeah, I'm that old. He actually designed Cleveland Guardians logo years ago when they started really talking about this. And if they'd have gone with his design and him being a Cleveland artist, let me tell you something, it'd be that much cooler. So he printed t-shirts and got them sent out. I'm going to reach out to him, see if I can use the Guardians logo as thumbnail on episodes in the future. But it is a phenomenal logo, and I will say this to this day. If the Cleveland Indians would have made a Cleveland artist, the guy who designed the logo, I think it would have won a lot more favor with the city. Not many people are happy with this. I am. I think it's a great name. The Spiders, again, we're arachnophobic in this house. Not really up for debate. I don't think I would have been able to go see him play again because there would have been a spider on the uniform and never would have been good. That would have been the only real one. I mean, Cleveland Rockers, that was a WNBA team, so you really don't want to do that. You had he also designed one to go with a radio station, WMMS, which was the Buzzard, and the Cleveland Buzzards. Now, I will say this, that was a sick drawing too. I don't know if the Buzzards would have caught on really well, but it would have been a great drawing and a great story. So the Guardians, again, I like the change of the name. I like where it went. I hate the logo. I think it's terrible. I like the uniform design. I like the C on the hat like they're going to keep. I like the way they have it written on the jerseys. The logo's terrible. Terrible. So, moving on. I'm going to shift from Cleveland to Dyersville, Iowa. Now, if anybody caught me on the inaugural episode of the Ballers podcast on the Shakeback Media Group and the Warzone Media show yesterday, Willie talked about the Field of Dreams game that just happened last week between the first place Chicago White Sox and the New York Yankees. And let me tell you something. I did not watch the game, mostly because the Yankees were playing in it. Secondly, the Mets were on that night. So, yeah, the Mets, they come first. But I did watch the before, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my entire life. When Kevin Costner walked out of the corn to the music from the movie, when you hear Shoeless Joe Jackson say, "If you build it, he will come," it gave you goosebumps. Costner walks in from the corn. He stands near the pitching mound. He looks back over his shoulder, and you see the players emerge. And the White Sox are wearing the 1919 uniform of that White Sox team that has gone down in infamy as the Black Sox. The Yankees, whose uniform hasn't changed, also walked out. Aaron Judge is an imposing figure walking out of that corn, man. Dude's a beast. Anyway, so Costner goes over to a microphone and he's talking to the crowd, and he talks about the movie, and he talks about its staying power, because the field Major League Baseball built's on the other side of that cornfield. It goes, the house is up in the corner. You have the field that they filmed it on. You have the corn, then the maze, then the ballpark that Major League Baseball built. But he said something really cool. And I've talked about it on Willie's show. I've talked about it with people I know. Costner said, there's just one more question to answer. Is this heaven? And the crowd cheered, which was cool. He said, I didn't hear you. I said, is this heaven? And 8,000 people said in unison, no, it's Iowa, which is right from the movie. It gives me, my hair on my arm is standing on end right now. It gave me chills. I talked to my sister about it the other day, and it gave me goosebumps to talk about it. So why in the grand scheme of life was this a big thing outside of baseball? Because this game gave credence to what James Earl Jones spoke about at the end of the movie. The one constant has been baseball. America has trudged on like an army of steamrollers, been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again. But baseball has marked the time. This field, it reminds us of what was good and could be again. Now, I'm going to talk college football in a minute, and I'm going to talk the NFL in a minute. But there is no other game that can make your heart feel like that than baseball. As I've said before, and as Billy Beane once said, a game so beautiful, it has to be played on a diamond. My only hope is MLB gets this right. They said they're going to do it again next year. I think by default, because of the movie and everything, the White Sox should play in this game every year. I would petition for them to play the Mets just because I think it would be cool. But now let's talk about a different movie they should emulate, and that's The Sandlot. And at that point in time, you've got to have the New York Mets in that game, because Pete Alonso is basically Hamilton Porter. He is the great Hambino, the polar bear. Jeff McNeil could play Smalls. Francisco Lindor or even Jacob deGrom could be Benny the Jet. So you can make the correlation between players on the Mets and the kids that played in that game. J.D. Davis would definitely be Bertram. Dominic Smith would be yeah. I don't know who the Twins would be yet, but I'll think about that. So all in all, the Field of Dreams game was so cool. Even James Earl Jones got into it. He did a narration of a video going into the game. And as much as people can't stand him, it really is only fitting that Joe Buck was the voice of this game. The only voice that would have been better would have been Vin Scully. But Joe Buck really is the modern voice of baseball, which people don't like. I happen to like Joe Buck. I like the way he calls a game. He gets just as excited as he needs to for each team. Does he have a love affair with Kyle Schwarber? Yeah, he does. But every broadcaster has a player they love. who, by the way, Joe Buck is actually doing Jeopardy right now. He's actually pretty good at it. Who would have thought? So that's what's been big to me with baseball. I will do a Mets episode in the next week or so because they're starting to. I'm glad this is gone. They're starting to drive me nuts. But let's get to Ohio State, who is full into fall practice. Ryan Day has been quoted as saying C.J. Stroud has started to separate himself in the quarterback battle, but he refuses to name a starter. Why is that? Well, two reasons. One of them is that I don't think C.J. Stroud has separated himself enough to be the frontline guy. And two, not to sound like this, Quinn Ewers, who was the number one recruit in the country, he enrolled early, and he is in school, and he was at practice today. So let's see what happens with him. Let's see what kind of package they build for him. They're the class of the Big Ten again, people. I will bring the Ohio State preview show in the next few weeks. I was trying to get people from other conferences to get on an episode with me, but unfortunately, I just don't have the time to do the proper research to sit down and talk with these guys and not have it turn into, I'm a fan of this conference, you're a fan of this conference, let's just argue. I will have time to dive into Ohio State. And I will have time to make sure I give you guys the kind of preview that will be informative, but also fan heavy, as I like to try and be. Back by popular request of me this year, I will be doing my Saturday morning or Friday night Ohio State previews each week, recapping the game from the week before and giving you a sneak peek at what is going to take place that day. I can guarantee you right now, the first game that will be a Friday night preview will be the second game of the season, which is the big showdown against Oregon at the Horseshoe, high noon on September 11th. Why? Bobby's baptism is that day, so that takes full precedent. So that will come to you Friday night. But now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode and why I want to do it, because the schedules are out. The preseason has started. The Cleveland Browns beat up on the Jacksonville Jaguars and Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence the other night. No starters really played, and they put up 23 points. That tells me one of three things. One, this team is that good. Two, the Jacksonville team didn't play anybody either. And three, they're that good. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to actually pick each one of their games with you right here. I will show you in blue gel writer pen what my prediction is for the Cleveland Browns. So here's what we got. Let's start. Opening week, September 12th, the 425 National AFC game in Kansas City, the same place the season ended last year against the Chiefs. I'm going to say it right now. They will beat Kansas City in Kansas City. And for the first time in I don't know how long, the Cleveland Browns will start the season 1-0. This is a defense that is much improved. Adding JOK at linebacker, refitting the entire secondary, and getting Grant Delpit and Greedy Williams back to go with Denzel Ward, to go with John Johnson, to go with Troy Hill, to go with Sione Takitaki, to go with, and then you get to the defensive line. And then you get to the bookend number one overall draft picks in Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. And scarily enough, Tommy Togiai from Ohio State is playing really well this camp and has had a good start to his pro football career. Let's see how good he does. But they now have an offensive line at both ends that can go after Mr. Mahomes. Ooh, my buddy Nick thinks it's going to be bad for him. I think Cleveland wins that game because Kansas City's defense did not really improve, whereas their offensive line finally did improve. But I like the Browns in that game. I like the Browns to beat Houston to start the season 2-0 at home, the home opener on the 19th. Look, the Deshaun Watson thing's a distraction. There is no more J.J. Watt. That was the oldest child calling. Let me tell her recording, and I will call her back. So we have that one there. I don't think Houston's defense has enough to stick with Cleveland. I also don't think Houston's I don't think their defense has enough to stop the Browns. I don't think their offense has enough to score with them. So let's start 2-0. Game 3, home for the Chicago Bears. Win number 3. Look, I honestly believe that by the time we get to week 3, Justin Fields will be the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. This is the first game that worries me. I think there's too much emotion for game 1. I think that they're too much better than the Texans to lose game 2. This one worries me if Fields can get on the field and be good. If it's Andy Dalton, look out, because those boys on the end are going to eat. At Minnesota on 10-3. Happy birthday to my sister. Unfortunately, Megan, you're going to be the Browns' first loss of the season. Look, Minnesota's sneaky good in their own building. Going on the road to an NFC team for the first time might not be as easy as it sounds. I think Kirk Cousins has a very good understanding of that offense. I think Minnesota gets the job done. The next week at the Los Angeles Chargers, W. They're going to beat up on Justin Herbert left, right, and center. The next week they are in Arizona. W. Again, the bookend defensive ends will keep Kyler Murray contained. And these boys can run. Broncos, W. Wow, I'm a homer. But still, I can back all this up. Denver's not that good. It's in Cleveland. Same thing with the Cardinal game. Halloween. Put the costume on. Go to the game and watch them whoop Ben Roethlisberger, who, by the way, I'm going to make a bold prediction here that by week 8, Dwayne Haskins is a starter in Pittsburgh. I really think that he's going to be the man there, and he's going to be good because he's finally in a situation where he can be himself, and he can be he's in a good situation. I mean, he gets drafted by a team because he went to the same school as the owner's kid, and guess what? He was not wanted by either coaching staff. That'll hurt you. On the 7th of November at Cincinnati, Joe Burrow's done. I think at New England, they fall into a trap. Mac Jones will probably be the starter by then. I think Belichick will be able to get a W out of his squad there. So, by the first 10, we're 8-2. Yeah, that sounds right. Week 11, home for Detroit on my father's birthday. Happy birthday, Dad. They beat Detroit on your birthday. Sunday night, 11:28 at the Ravens. If all goes well, I will be just getting home from Cleveland that night, but I have the Browns losing in Baltimore. The division games are the division games. As much as I cannot stomach the Baltimore Ravens, I think the Browns will lose that game there. They have their bye in week 13, and then they come right back to the Ravens on Zachary's 18th birthday on December 12th. Zach, thank you. You get a W right there. As I think they beat the Ravens at home. So 12-19, the week before Christmas, the Las Vegas Raiders. Special thing. I am trying to get Willie to do a preview of that game with me, as Willie is a big Raider fan. Willie Epting, the guy from Shakeback Media and the Family of Baseball podcast, big Raider fan, started his life out in Northern California, excuse me. Loves the Raiders, loves the A's, cannot stomach the Warriors. We're on the same page, Willie. Yeah, I got them beating the Raiders too. Sorry. I like the defense. I just like this defense. Not so Merry Christmas to Cleveland. I have an L to the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay on Christmas Day. They will wear the 75th anniversary uniforms that day, which I think will be very, very cool to look at. Look, it's Aaron Rodgers. I don't think they beat Aaron Rodgers in his house. I don't think there's anything bad about that. I just don't think they beat him. Monday night, the 3rd of January at Pittsburgh. I think they're going to split the season series between the Steelers and the Ravens. A loss at Pittsburgh. The next week, home for the Bengals. That's a W. So here it is in pen. The W's and the L's marked next to each other. The bye is circled. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 5 for the Cleveland Browns in the first 17-game season. And I even signed it. And my signature is hot garbage. I will dive into a full Browns preview as well. They have a lot coming back. When I did my bullet points for the show, let me give you a mini preview. Let me talk to you about there was only one quarterback or two quarterbacks in NFL history with a 90 QBR, 80 touchdown passes, and 11,000 yards in their first 3 seasons. One of them is arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. That's Dan Marino. The other's Baker Mayfield. Somebody going to get paid. Nick Chubb has signed a new 3-year extension with the Cleveland Browns. Getting that out of the way. Willie said something on his show on part of the show yesterday. I was on part of it in a recorded segment. If you get a chance to listen, Bobby's in it with me. He said he felt that the Raiders were going to have one of the top 3 running back tandems in the NFL this year. I don't disagree. As long as you understand, Willie, the number 1 tandem is in the North Coast. It is Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and there is nothing anyone can do about it. Those 2 boys can run the rock, they can catch the rock, they can break the big play, and they can do it all in that offense that Kevin Stefanski has running like a top. Also, according to Pro Football Focus, the Cleveland Browns have the number 1 offensive line in the game. It's all setting up for them to have a huge year. Here is the difference between the huge year they should have had under Freddie Kitchens and the huge year I think they're going to have under Kevin Stefanski. This is the first time in Baker's career he will have the same head coach, an offensive coordinator, and front office staff each year, or back-to-back years, since he was drafted. Kevin Stefanski is Baker's 4th head coach. They are on their 4th offensive coordinator. Andrew Berry is the 2nd GM he's had. Everything is lining up for this year to be a marquee year in Cleveland Browns history. 2 things that will derail this. Number 1 is injuries. That is every year in the NFL, every team. If you get hurt, you're not going to do well. Second thing that can derail it is playing down to your competition. I don't think the Bears are on their level. I don't think the Texans are on their level. I don't think the Broncos or the Bengals or the Lions are on their level. But if you play down, you can lose a game. And with a new 17-game season and the Steelers and Ravens both coming back at least as good as they were last year, let me rephrase that. With the Ravens coming back at least as good as they were last year, although the injury bug has hit their wide receiver core, you have to win this division. You need to get a home playoff game in Cleveland in January. And make sure it's one of the West Coast teams that has to come in. So I think 12-5 will get that done, at least guarantee them a home game in the playoffs. I won't say the 2 words yet, although it's a possibility. And I'm not going to say the 2 words yet. Get me to the bye at 9-3. And I'll say that word, or those two words. So, coming up on Big Rican, we have the full Browns preview coming up in the next couple of weeks, obviously before the opener on 9/12. We're going to have the Ohio State show before they open the week before that. Now, caveat, it will not be the final weekend of August. That is my 10th wedding anniversary. Podcasting is off limits. That's by my say. I will come to you with some Mets stuff. They are playing in San Francisco right now. God help them. Hopefully, they start to get some of these guys back and start to make some hay in this division and get this done. Also, we'll be doing the Ohio State game previews every week, starting with the Minnesota game in a few Labor Day weekend. They play Minnesota. So we'll start there. Every Saturday morning, we'll come to you with Ohio State stuff. Every Sunday morning, we'll come to you with the Browns. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. I will talk to you sometime next week with a little bit of Mets and a little bit of some, a little bit of this. Have a good one. Oh, and by the way, we are definitely doing night before, Black Friday, the night before the big game. We will be doing an episode unlike any other. We will be doing an episode that unfortunately has to be done. And if all goes the way I think it's going to go, this episode will send Jim Harbaugh off into retirement. Have a great rest of your week. I will see you next week. Let's go Mets.